Welcome, everyone, to Pick the Brain podcast. I'm Dr. Caleb Frankel. I am an ER veterinarian by trade and the founder of Instinct. And we're starting this new podcast project because over the years of building Instinct, we've been really fortunate to get to learn from some of the best hospital leaders in the field, since they tend to self-select for Instinct tools, of course. And so we thought we'd try something new, this podcast, to share some of that awesome learning that we get to hear from people we work with the rest of the veterinary community. And we're trying to share things on hospital operations, leadership, ownership, construction projects. We'll get to that, industry trends, and of course, technology. So this morning, I am so excited to have Helen Irving on Pick the Brain. Helen is the CEO of the world famous Animal Medical Center in New York City. And many people don't know Helen, but I think Helen needs some more spotlight in the vet space because you are one of the most impressive leaders I've got to meet, and you're doing some amazing things at AMC. You have a really cool background moving from human hospital administration in that world, and you've been everything from a nurse all the way for the past, maybe 2 decades as an executive, leading centers like Mount Sinai Medical Center and an organization called Live On New York City, which is, my understanding, is a large organ procurement nonprofit in the human organ transplant world. But in 2023, I got introduced to Helen, and you were hired to be the next CEO of AMC. And for those who don't know, the Animal Medical Center in New York is arguably one of the most important veterinary hospitals in the world. It's a multi-story building, which we are going to get into, in the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And the AMC's kind of been this, I guess I'd call it a veterinary institution, but it's also a New York City institution, which is pretty cool to say, since the early 1900s, which is just incredible. Today, the AMC is widely regarded in the veterinary community as the largest, or one of the largest nonprofit institutions. It's also the largest teaching center in veterinary medicine worldwide, and the care that you get there is really cutting edge. It's viewed as a research center. It's a training center for many veterinary specialists worldwide. And one of the other things that's really cool, it's one of only, I think now 4 level 1 veterinary trauma centers on the planet. So pretty impressive stuff. So finally, in my long-winded intro, I want to tell a story before I say hi. So Helen has been, for me, a great fellow CEO. I call on you because you actually have a ton of experience with software and software transitions. And I remember when you got hired at AMC, the team had recently selected Instinct as their next practice management software. We've had a relationship for years, but like any good CEO, you were probably skeptical. You wanted to make sure that the team was doing the right thing for an important part of your hospital. And so you did a very thorough look. And I remember we got to meet a few times, but at the end of it, you sort of called me, or we were in person, and you told me it was obviously the right decision you had decided. The biggest thing was you wanted to make sure you had a software partner that sort of matched the pioneering spirit that you were trying to bring to the next phase of AMC, which I'll share is one of the best compliments I've ever received and our team's ever received. And hopefully we're living up to that. So thank you for your amazing partnership and the work you're doing, and welcome to Pick the Brain.
Yeah, thank you, Caleb. It's since I've been here just 3 years now, it seems like a lifetime, but I know it's not. And it's certainly not in AMC's history for sure. But I think my entire career, everything I've done from hospital leadership to other software implementations to other construction projects to building new programs, kind of was preparing me for AMC, right? And I know when I first got the call for the position, it was through a recruiter, right?
Yep.
And the first thing I said to the woman on the end of the phone, I said, did somebody hit you over the head with a 2x4? Because, clearly you didn't read my resume. I'm not a veterinarian, and so then she explained, well, the board's looking for someone that can run a hospital, but partner with the doctors. And then once it was explained to me like that, then I said, you know what, I'm in.
That's awesome.
And then, fast forward, I ended up being selected. And I think, I hope that I bring a level of refreshing leadership to AMC that really wants to put the doctors first.
Yeah.
My job is to make sure they've got everything that they need to do great work. It's as simple as that. And it means taking care of the staff. It means taking care of your doctors. It means taking care of this building, right?
Yep.
And if I'm not doing that, I'm not doing a good job. And that's how I feel about leadership.
Well, yeah.
It's very simple. Take care of your people.
Well, I can say I see it. I'm fortunate enough to live close enough that I come to visit a lot, and I get to see the culture that you're creating there, and the amazing work that basically bleeds out to the team and the patients that they care for. So,
and you're very happy about software. I mean, I remember when I first came. Obviously my comparison is human healthcare, right?
Yep.
And I'm like, oh Lord, I think I made a big mistake. I think I just went back 20 years. Like, what did I do, right?
Yep.
So, no EMR. And, I came from having implemented Epic. And also in the transplant world, we have a very boutique EMR as well. So I'm used to boutique. So that was the first thing that was a little terrifying. Paper everywhere.
Yep.
I mean, how many trees are we killing? There's just paper everywhere.
Yep.
And
100 years of paper, right? I mean,
100 years of paper. And I swear the same subway tiling from the 1960s was still on the walls, right? And so inherited this construction project, which, I will say they lied to me when they hired me. They told me it was only going to be a year. And 5 years later, we've almost finished. I mean, our construction company is about to leave in May when the outside is finally finished. But the inside, the clinical space is done.
It's amazing.
And all I can say is, we've all renovated our apartments at some point in time, right? So just imagine you're renovating a kitchen. You got construction workers in your home for about 6 to 8 weeks, and the kitchen's gone. So the microwave's in the bedroom, you're washing up dishes in the bathroom, you don't know where the knives and forks are, you hope the dog didn't eat it, that kind of stuff. And that's stressful, right? So now imagine that your entire apartment's being gutted and renovated and you're living in it. And, you don't know where the front door is because it keeps changing. The walls are coming down, they're going back up, everything's moving. And you find yourself in a small little quiet space in the corner where they're not touched anything and you stay there. That was what renovating AMC was like. Every 6 months, we got smaller internally and smaller and smaller and smaller as we had to give up the space to the construction teams to renovate, right?
Wow. Well,
and little by little, something else opened up, right? So,
well, let me ask you about that. Yeah. So we're here to pick your brain on this massive construction project. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's 83,000 square feet, $125 million project that was, put together through a donation campaign. I think it was 18 phases, if I have it right. Maybe it's more.
18-phase construction plan. Yep.
I read somewhere that the construction company, these are massive construction companies in Manhattan, said that it was the most complex project in all of Manhattan. I don't know if that's a true quote or not.
Yep.
And the fascinating part for me is the team kind of worked through it, right? You probably had a choice where we had to either take people out or, do it around the clinical teams. And this is not just a general practice. This is a massive multi-specialty. So maybe tell us about the building, I guess, first, and then tell us about, the project itself, the statistics around it and how it was sold to you when you started.
Right. So, it was pretty clear when I walked on my interview that if they weren't renovated, my first recommendation would be, can we find a new building? That was pretty clear, that something needed to happen. And so I was actually relieved that they were doing this renovation. So there was an element of relief coming in. And to anyone who's about to contemplate doing any kind of renovation, my recommendation to you is you need 3 sets of documents. And you need to include as many of your doctors and as many of your staff as you possibly can in the planning and the design, because the architects have not a clue. Right? They have some idea about building in a hospital, but they can't perfect it to what you're looking for. You have to do that for them. And if they're not at the table, you will get it wrong. But the three sets of documents are really important, right? So one is the pretty pictures that they show where everything's going to be and what it's going to look like when you're done. The second one is the architectural drawings, which are all the technical stuff, right? The behind the walls kind of stuff. The third set of documents is your space planning document, which says when you do X, Y has to happen. So if you're going to build internal medicine unit, where do they go while you build it? Right? And so 18 phases, just think about that. So there should have been a big document that says when you do this, people go here and then they go there and then they come back and so on and so forth. That was missing. So when I arrived, it was like pretty clear to me when I start looking, because I tend to look 6 months out, right? And we're in it now, but I'm looking 6 months down the road. I'm like looking to the next year thinking, oh Lord, how are we going to do this next bit? Because we've got to cut out the entire middle section of the emergency room.
Yeah.
And so there's no way to connect them, right? So stats come in one side, construction, ER the other side. Like we got to connect those dots pretty quickly. So I think take the time with your teams to really strategize about who moves where. And we did have to go off-site. We moved the entire administration left and is actually across the street. And we've not brought them back, right? The other thing that happened was it was pretty clear to me that when we were doing our treatment room and our emergency room, that everyone had to move to what is just our outpatient second floor. That's everyone. And I mean internal medicine, cardiology, neurology, like everyone. And that's where primary care sits. So there's only 8 computers. That's it, right? So something's got to give. So we ended up renting some space across the street and actually moved our primary care operations over to York Avenue and made that a standalone practice over there to ease up space so medicine could move, so that we could upgrade the treatment. So it's those types of thinkings that you have to go through every day with every step.
So,
and, you know, so 80% of my time until this point has been construction.
Yeah.
I could say the other 20% is instinct, but 80% of the time is construction. Right?
Yeah. You renovated your whole workflow system, which we're not here to talk about, but at the same time, which is wild.
Yeah. I mean, I moved offices 4 times.
Oh my gosh. Well, so with the construction project, were there any real lows in the, journey or challenges and how did you navigate them?
I think the biggest challenge was staff morale. More than anything else. Yes, they put up with an awful lot. We asked an incredible amount of them, and they stepped up. They said, all right, we can do this. Let's figure it out, right? Every single time. But I do think, and I warn people all the time, do not underestimate the impact of construction on your staff.
Yeah.
It is demoralizing.
Yeah.
You are coming to work day to day with a jackhammer at your head.
Yeah.
And your space and your workspace gets worse by the week, right? You are trying to care for critically ill animals in that environment. So then you've got the noise impact on the animals, right? That you're concerned about because they need peace and quiet to recover. You're renovating your operating rooms and you're trying to do delicate, minimally invasive surgery with banging and crashing and jackhammering going on, right? So we had to put a lot of thought into that. So how about the jackhammering is done at 4 a.m, right? When there's no operating rooms going, only emergencies. How about we have a system whereby any doctor could say, look, I just need this to stop.
Yeah.
We can't do this right now, right? And if there's construction going on outside our chemotherapy administration room that you want that quiet, it's got to stop. So you have to kind of build in some humanity into the construction project. And then on top of that, you've got the impact on the community around you and the clients coming in. I remember getting a kind of a nasty little email from someone saying, you've been at this for 5 years. This is ridiculous. We spent a lot of time meeting with community boards, letting them know what was going on, apologizing for the chaos we were causing, because where we're located is on a main thoroughfare to the FDR highway, which goes around Manhattan.
Yep.
So every so often we blocked it, right? Shut it down. And the whole of Manhattan is mad at us because you cannot get onto the FDR.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that, a lot of permits, a lot of inspections. So I think those were the real lows.
Okay.
When it became a high was when we said, okay, we're moving next week, new space. And I'll never forget when we moved the ORs upstairs to their brand new suite.
And they
they
are
had
beautiful if you haven't seen them.
sunlight.
Yeah.
Sunlight for the first time. That second floor had no windows. They had sunlight. People were smiling. People were beaming. It was quiet. They could move around. You had space. And people were just ecstatic. And that was what carried on with the other teams. Because they would say to me, when ER knew that they were next, they were like, oh, I just want what they have. I just want that feeling. I just want to feel like that.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, there is a video, there are a series of videos online, but there's one about AMC being the hospital of the future. We're going to link it in the notes here. I think it's a wonderful look at the journey, and you can get to see the hospital if you don't live close enough to visit. I guess my last question for you today is if other hospital leaders are listening who are about to embark on a construction project, or maybe they're in one, what tips would you give them as a leader? I got to see you, maybe it was when I was there, but you're really out front with the team. I love your approach of being just, there with everybody. You can tell when you walk in the room, it's not one of those, oh, the CEO's here, we're going to act different. It's like you're viewed as a partner to them. But what tips would you give to people who are leading through this maybe?
I think, there's two types of leadership that I think I have, and it varies on the situation, right? So I call it, you either lead from in front or you lead from behind. And when I say lead from behind, what that means is that, if Fox News comes to us and they want a story about, it's cat jumping season, right? It's not going to be me. Right? I'm going to lead from behind. I want my doctors out there. I want the team out there. They're so good, right? I'm in the background. I'm just doing my thing, I want to make them good.
Yeah.
That's leading from behind. Leading from in front is very different. Leading from in front is like, guys, we got this. You lead with authority. You lead with presence. You show up.
Yeah.
This isn't the time to say I'm working from home this week, and you disappear.
Yeah.
Not acceptable in my mind. And I mandated that the whole team had to be present and show up and walk the floors, walk the halls. If you see something, fix it, say something.
Yeah.
I remember when we were opening the emergency room, I just told my team, the whole team, I said, there's no PTO for 3 months. None. You take it now or you're not taking it till after March. Because I need all of you hands on deck to help move the critical care unit and the ICU. And you don't want it to be just me. You all need to help.
Wow.
And so, set the expectations, but step up yourself and be that leader that they can say, wow, I'm glad she's here.
Yeah. So much of leadership is communication, and being out front is good communication. I love that.
Yeah, you got to be seen. You got to be seen, and you got to walk the walks. And I wear t-shirts like everyone else. I have 2 sets of scrubs in case I need them.
I've seen it.
My guys called me. They said, we've got this great doctor here. Can you come and see them? And I said, yeah. Where is he? It was in the OR operating. I said, okay. So threw on some scrubs and went to the OR. Right.
I love it. Well, go ahead.
You got to come in front.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, I'm going to wrap up with 2. We always wrap up with 2 questions. I'm going to mix these up for you today. So first of all, I've learned this from you, but you always say you think 6 months ahead. You said that. Where's AMC going next? What's filling your time now? What can you share with everybody?
So now I get to do an awful lot of strategic planning. So my head is in the next 3 to 5 years. We are really looking at how can we as AMC contribute back to veterinary medicine with all of the data that we have at AMC,
Ooh,
right? So it's,
I love it.
50,000 visits per year for the last however many years. At one point we were, 85,000 visits?
Yeah.
We're rich with data.
Yep.
We want to be able to mine that data and give it back to the community so that we can improve the care for animals.
Love it.
So that's where we're at right now.
Okay.
And then how do we teach that as well? So how do we get better at education beyond residents and interns, right? How do we build that professional training environment for veterinarians? And
Right.
how can we contribute?
Well,
So that's the next version of AMC.
okay. Well, I know we're going to talk about that behind the scenes, but maybe we'll have you back on the podcast to talk about that really cool topic.
Yeah, when we've got that sorted out.
Yeah,
And it's great. We just hired our first AI software engineer.
I know.
So we're going places.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's as simple as that.
Okay. And last question then is, what is one, I ask everybody this, but what's one leadership lesson just in general that you've maybe learned the hard way that's cost you time or money or energy as a leader? I call this 2x4 advice. In your journey as a leader of hospitals, there's always those 2x4s that whack you in the head around the corner. But
Yep.
Can you share any advice maybe to help emerging leaders who are listening, maybe avoid this?
I've always maintained that not making a decision is fatal. When something is presented to you, hesitation or not addressing something when it needs to be addressed is absolutely diminishing for morale and for you as a leader. It is better to make a decision and move forward than to make no decision. If the decision happens to be the wrong decision, own it. And say to your team, I made that decision. Clearly, that wasn't the right decision at that moment in time. We need to adjust our course and go in a different way, but own it. If you don't make a decision, the entire organization is left floundering and not knowing what's going on, right?
Yeah, I love that.
And that's my advice. If you don't know what decision to make, you have a leadership team. I put them in the room. I say, this is the issue. Give me your advice. Make the decision.
Yep. I love I think it comes from Jeff Bezos, but I love the framework that sort of there's one-way door decisions and two-way door decisions. You can, if you make a mistake, go back. And if it is one of those most common two-way door decisions, you need to be able to make it once you have 60 or 70% of the information. If you wait till you have 100, it's too late. You've made the wrong decision. And I think that's a really good framework.
Yeah. My other one I tell people that is fatal too is don't make hallway decisions. I refuse to make hallway decisions. People will catch you in the hallway and say, hey, Helen, I just want to ask you, and you don't think, you don't have data, it's incomplete data. And you're like, oh, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Next thing you know, CFOs come into you and say, did you just approve a $50,000 spend? I'm like, no. Oh, yeah, you did.
Veterinary professionals love to make their leaders make hallway decisions. I'm guilty as charged. So,
I learned that years ago. I learned that human doctors do the same thing. I learned that years ago. No, won't do it. You can meet me in my office. I'm not doing it.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for giving us your time. This has been incredibly valuable, and we appreciate all the work you're doing at AMC.
Thank you. And thank you for having me on the podcast. It's great fun.